No. Are you talking about the report that ranked affordability of living across
That might
the
have been,
state?
but in there the weather was
Different counties.
What
Oh,
we get-
yeah.
we got
They said
like
our
a-
weather was horrible.
what were we, a C or C minus or something
Yeah.
like that.
Indiana County overall received a B minus, but our worst grade was a D, I think, for our weather. It's not like we can fix that.
No, how do we do that?
It is Indiana in the morning here on AM 1160, 101.1 FM. And yes, everybody else is joining us in mid-conversation. But you can start a conversation on your own by giving us a call at 479-1160 or 349-WCCS if you have a question for Bob Pollock about this or that or the other thing. Well, speaking of the weather, this is a change coming, isn't it?
Isn't it, though?
Wow.
Look at that. We go from
Summer to autumn.
almost 80s to 50s.
How do we approach that in terms of...
We grab a jacket and keep doing what we do.
We've not had a killer frost.
No, and it doesn't look like
We're going to
that's
get one.
coming. No, it's just going to be cooler, and we'll avoid that, so things will slow down, but they'll keep
Yeah.
chugging along yet.
The cool weather that we have coming in this coming week, because it's going to be like this basically for the next week in terms of temperatures. We're going to get down in the upper 30s, I think, a couple of times. But none of that is really any cause for great concern. But does it slow down appreciably the growing that is going on out there right now?
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially those plants that are more sensitive to it. But things are already, because of the shorter days, starting to change, and we can see that in the leaves. But this will help push that along. And then things we're trying to, of course, this is the time of year to plant garlic. If you don't have it already planted,
We have a garlic planter who calls frequently to
Yes.
talk about his garlic plants.
so hopefully
he's got them in.
he's got it in.
Yeah.
If not, soon. And but those, so as the air temperatures cool down, so will the soil temperatures. So we can still get, like on our lawns, for example, we'll start to see a slowdown now of the growth on top, but the root systems keep growing.
Yeah, okay.
So as long as those soil temperatures stay up there, and they take longer to for that temperature to decrease there, but then when we get to a point, usually lower than 50 or down to 45 or so, then things will really stop or cease growth.
There is usually a period in late July, we hope it's no sooner than late July, when we get a little dusting of snow, too. Or at least, one of those snow-rain mix types of things. It doesn't really have an effect, though, on what's growing outside, does it? Unless it turns into something more substantial.
No, although it looked like maybe tomorrow there could be some down in that Somerset area. It looked like...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, with the rain that's coming, some of that might be a little white.
Okay.
Up in the ridges for them, but
So as we're going outside, things that we should be doing around the house right now with the weather turning cooler, the leaves starting to fall, and that happens, and so people start wondering about cleaning up leaves. They're already, Amish are burning leaves in the neighborhood. It stinks. But I know that you're a great advocate of soil testing before putting anything on it.
you should be visiting them and just bringing up that they could compost all that and use that then for food, for
talk
organic
about
matter to put on their plants.
Talk about that,
On their
because
fields.
I know that there are some who have called us who have talked about composting. So here comes all these leaves, and of course there are all kinds of materials all season long, all year long, that you can compost. How does one go about starting to compost?
And really, with the leaves, all you need to do is push them into a pile. You can have a simple fence. You can get as elaborate as you'd like to, but really just need a place to corral them. And you can push them in a pile and let them alone.
Don't have to chop them up or anything like that?
You don't have to. No, you can, but you don't have to. By chopping them up, they will decay quicker and turn into compost sooner, but you don't have to do that.
It's harder to gather them up when you have them chopped.
Yes, yeah. So, if you're using your mower and you're bagging it and collecting the leaves through the mower, that will chop them all up to start the process. Or if you're just raking and piling them, that's all you need to do. If you got a back corner or someplace where you can just push them, and then you can just simply use some simple wire fence and a few posts to make a little bit of a a one-sided or two-sided corral, and just push them up in there so you can get more height and depth there. Let them alone.
That's all you do.
Yeah, that's all you
Do you go out
have
and
to
turn
do.
them at some point?
You don't have to. You can, which will still, by turning it periodically, that will introduce some more oxygen in there, and that will help it compost faster.
Okay.
But you can have a static pile, just push it there and let it alone, and eventually on the bottom, of course on the top it won't decay as quickly as once you get down into those layers where it holds the moisture, where the top oftentimes will dry out. And so that won't break down as quick. But when you get in the middle of that, that'll heat up and compost, and within a year you can start pulling things away and getting into the bottom of the pile, and you should have some reasonable compost in there, or at least leaf mold, which is still, you can kind of see the particles of leaves, but then you can turn around and mulch beds with that. So one way to do it would be to put a layer of that on beds, and then if you wanted to finish it off with a little bark mulch, if you mulch your beds with bark, you could use some of that leaf mold first, and then just top dress with the bark would be an option. Or you can just use the leaf mold. And, of course, it's good for putting on the garden as well.
Yeah. Okay. So
lots of uses for that other than turning them into ashes.
now, what about the people who do the leaf mulch and they're doing that with composting, and they want to add some household waste to it, food waste and stuff like that.
So
there are things you can't add.
Yeah, so you can layer it. You can add the grass clippings. You can add weeds that you pull out too. Of course, you're still getting some. You may be getting some of those seeds. If you can cut the seed heads off and just use the plant material in there, but any of that, any garden debris, cleaning plants out of the vegetable garden, all that can be used. Any fruit and vegetable scraps can be added into that pile. Usually we try to keep out any oils or grease or meats, those kind of things, which are even more potentially attractive to
eggshells and banana skins and things of that nature.
Yeah, you can. Yep, you can put those in there.
Oh, that can all go in there.
Yep, can all go in there.
There you go.
And eventually it'll decay and rot and turn into organic matter, which has value as a fertilizer, but also, more importantly, adding that organic matter in there, which helps make the soil, improves the condition of the soil. It actually allows it to not only hold more water, but there's also more airspace in the soil, and it's just a better place for plants to grow.
Yeah. We're heading in toward winter, and people who have rain barrels or maybe want rain barrels to be a part of what they're doing around their house. Rain barrels in wintertime, not all that consequential, right? But if
not as much, no. And you have to.
I was going to ask, do you have to block it off?
Yeah, whatever your, depending on your setup and whether could be issues with the plumbing, not so much the barrel itself, but any kind of plumbing you have there, if that was susceptible to freezing, and build up with ice in there, and then it'll crack the pipe. So a lot of times you'll just have to
open the valve
up and not be collecting for the winter.
Yeah, and obviously if you're opening the valve up, make sure that you're draining it away from the foundation of the house.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Some of the
usually we don't, but you could still use some of that water, because you may have indoor plants. So if you still have a way to collect that a little bit, you don't need near as much usually, but you can still make use of that to water indoor plants. Of course, the temperature needs to be tempered. You almost need to, from that outside temperature, bring it in, or it needs to be, the container cannot just be exposed to conditions, because eventually the whole container will freeze. If we have cold enough temperatures for long enough.
Okay, so those are some of the things that you can do as you're looking, forward to winter.
Yeah, right. But just as we change the seasons and maybe cleaning things up, and it's still a great time to plant things, although the weather hasn't cooperated that well with us to do that this fall, just because of the wetter soil conditions. But
shrubbery, you mean?
Yeah,
things of that nature?
Trees, a number of trees and shrubs and things can be planted in the fall. You don't have to wait for spring. We just like to especially with trees, a lot of times the nurseries will wait till the leaves fall, and then that signals their digging season, because the plant has gone dormant, so there's less stress on the plant. Once it goes dormant, you can dig it, ball and burlap it, and then those can be moved and planted.
And they'll wake up in the spring not knowing where they are, but saying, okay, I'm here.
I'm here. Let's
start growing here.
Get some leaves and let's get going.
You grow where you're planted.
And clean up a lot of plants. Some of the perennials, you can just leave them as is. You don't need to mow off the tops or cut off the tops, especially things that may have fall and winter interest, whether it's leaves or seed heads or seed pods or any of those kind of ornamental characteristics, the color variations. Those things can all be kind of left there to provide some occasional winter interest for you, and then in the spring you can cut them off if necessary and clean them up, tidy them up a little bit. A lot of native bees and things like that, there's a lot of insects and things that will use those types of plants as nesting areas or protected sites where they'll spend the winter, and then they'll be ready to go in spring. So usually it's best not to completely clean up everything.
All right. There you go. He's Bob Pollock, the Extension Service, with us here this morning, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It is the voice